dyes. Let's look at some of the plant material used to produce water-soluble plant extract. We've got some videos up that you can look at and see how some of these things are done in production methods. These are basically looking at the plant materials. This shows you the Hunt of the Unicorn, which is a tapestry. It's dyed with Weld, which is yellow, with Madder, which is red, and Woad, which is blue. When we deal with these dyes have been around for a long period of time. When they are used, they can be used to make a lot of different colors. And once you've got the yellow, the red, and the blue, you can mix them together and make purples and oranges and different colors like that. Plant materials we're going to look at include annatto, bloodroot, butternut, henna, indigo, longwood, and madder. These all have different colors to them. You can see we've got reds and browns and oranges and blues and blacks. These become very important. We've got plant materials that include safflower, saffron, weld, and woad. You've got yellows, reds, and blues. There are a lot of different plant materials we're going to have to go through. Annatto, Bisha aureliana. This gives you a red material. The flowers you can see, they're very unique flowers, lots of stamens in them. They produce a very large capsule. The capsule, when it splits open, has got these red seeds on the inside. You take the red seeds out, you use them for your dye. These can be used in food as annatto seed. This will cause the food you treat with it to take on a red color. It's a type of natural red dye that you can use. You can also use it as a beverage. Bloodroot, red color. Malvaceae. These are what the plants look like. They grow all over the place. You pull out the roots, you harvest the roots. It's got a flower that is a mallow type flower. Out of that, you get a red type coloration. Plant extracts themselves are toxic. It is used as a dye. It's a popular red dye used by Native American artists, especially among the southeastern river cane basket makers. Reds out of this are made with the bloodroot. They take the cane that they're going to use to weave the basket, and they will dye that. Then they will use it to make various patterns. We have butternut. Butternut is Juglans cinerea. It is a brown dye. This is white walnut. So this is a tree. This is not the same thing as a butternut squash. This is what the tree looks like. They take the material out of it. Those are the nuts. They take the bark, and they use the bark to make a brown dye. Young roots can make a black dye. With an iron mordant, it changes the color from charcoal to gray. They used butternut to be able to dye the cloth that the soldiers for the South used during the American Civil War. They were called the Grays because they had used this butternut type dye, this charcoal to gray coloration of the butternut for the cloth. We have henna. Henna binds to protein. It's often used for hair and skin. We've got a video on how they prepare henna. They basically take it out of the leaf. They grind up the leaf. They make this pasty type material that you can then paint on and create these very interesting designs. The designs are somewhat of a temporary tattoo because they wash off after a while. Indigo. Indigo comes from a bean. The leaves are fermented to release the dye, and we've got a video on how they do that. And indigo plants basically look like this. You can see the doubly compound leaves. You can see the long spikes of flowers. When you get the indigo out of it, the indigo is actually pressed into a kind of a block form. You can break off little blocks of it. They use this stuff to be able to dye the cotton to make things like blue jeans. We've got logwood. Logwood is a black coloration. This shows you the plant of logwood. They process it down to get the black. We've got madder. Madder comes from the roots. It's one of the oldest dyes. Madder is a red. You can see the name up here. Rubia, red. Tinctorium. It paints. The plant looks like this. You extract the dye out of it, then you use the red dye. You can see it's got very unique, tiny little flowers in there. This is an artifact that comes out of a museum. You can see the reds in here on this very old piece of pottery. The reds in here were made from madder. This is a piece of pottery that's several thousand years old. There's your red coloration. Safflower. Again, you see the name up here, tinctorius. It is used to color things. Safflower is used as a red or yellow dye for food. It's one of the oldest dyes. Out of it, you get Carthamus, which is natural red 26. Plants look like this. They are a thistle type plant. Out of it, they harvest the material to make the red dye. You have saffron, which comes from a crocus. A crocus is a little lily type plant. It gives you a red dye. In this particular case, you can see the lily. They remove the stamens out of this. They gather the dye. It's the stamens of the crocus plant. It's the most expensive spice by weight. It costs a ton of money for it. This is a thing of selected saffron that I saw in the food store. In this particular case, it says the weight is 0.014 ounces. This stuff was $3. If it's $3 for 0.4 grams, then that's $7,500 per kilogram. That is a phenomenal cost for these things. We have Woad. Woad is a yellow dye. The dye is called luteolin. It's a flavonoid type dye. Your plant looks like this. It's a very unique type of plant. They get this nice yellow color out of it. This particular material has been dyed by Woad. We've got Woad. Woad is a blue dye. It comes from the leaves. This is a brassicaceae, which means it's a relative of cabbage. You get a blue dye. This almost looks like wild mustard growing along the side of the road. It is harvested. You get the blue dye out of the leaves. The blue dye can be powdered down to look like that. Would take that material in order to be able to dye things with it. When we're looking at dyes, there are a lot of different kinds of dyes that you can have, a lot of different colors that you can get. These are all natural sorts of things that have been used by humanity for long periods of time in order to be able to get colors. More recently, we've gone to artificial type dyes, but these natural dyes are still very important worldwide.